Hello, welcome to the second module. Um, I'm really excited about this one because it includes what I consider to be one of the most important questions in education. In fact, it's my primary research question. In this next chapter, Willis opens with a question about why we don't have more joy in our schools. And my primary research question is, how do we re-enchant learning so that faculty and students can flourish? And so she's just really tugging at my heartstrings with this one. And I hope the fact that there's this big question at the heart of this gets you really excited about this particular chapter. So there's two ways you could increase joy in learning. One is by reducing the things that kill joy, and the other is increasing the things that bring more joy. And this one is about that first one, reducing the things like stress that reduce students' joy. And so I want you to think for a minute about how stress affects you. One of my favorite examples is, for a while, when I didn't go to the airport very frequently, I would get in that, like right at the beginning of the TSA, and I would feel so stressed that my brain wouldn't work right, and I'd be like, "What do I do? What am I supposed to do?" Like, I'm a normal adult, but the stress just kind of really messed with my brain and made it difficult for me to just calmly think my way through what needed to happen. And I want you to think for a moment about times in your life where, like, a sudden stress has made it difficult for you to think straight. Um, I also want you to think a little bit about the idea of chronic stress, not like immediate stress in the moment, but the types of chronic stress that our students today are facing. And I would argue it's almost as bad as it's ever been for students. There are definitely times around the world when when students have been like literally in the midst of war and so forth. That's obviously worse. But in just kind of normal, non-war time, I think what we're seeing today is about as bad as we've ever seen for a number of reasons. One is social media. We now know that there's a direct link between use of social media and anxiety, depression, and suicide, especially in girls and especially in middle school girls. Um, we know that students aren't getting out in nature as often as kids used to in the past, and that can be a stressor. There's issues of what might be called overparenting, where parents are constantly solving problems for their children. And so students don't learn to solve problems for themselves and they're less confident. Um, then there's political polarization, which um, really does affect kids more than you would think, because oftentimes it destroys family relationships, friendships, um, brings anger to the surface. And so all that's very stressful. Of course, the lingering concerns about the pandemic are still on students' minds. Um, the news saturation um, can often affect kids especially those who live in households where like the news is just kind of constantly on. Students are worried about climate change. And of course, more recently, they're now worried about AI, and they're probably already hearing about how it really could be detrimental to humanity. And as someone who has looked into it, eh, that's a that's an actual thing. I mean, if we're not careful, that actually could happen. So I think the reason I'm saying that it's such a big deal right now for kids is because of the number of stressors. And and I think that's larger than normal, just the sheer number. The pace of change, way, way faster pace than we've ever seen in the history of humanity. And then the fact that they have a lack of skills to handle change because of overparenting. And so I want you to keep all that in the back of your mind as you're reading this chapter that looks at reducing stress for kids. So let's take a moment and just look at what should maybe be happening in on your personal pages. So I'm going to share my own personal page, and note that you can come look at my personal page anytime you want. There's a link to it in the list of links, the main stage. Okay, so here's my page for learner development. And for the first couple of weeks, we're mostly going to be working on these first two projects. Now, perusal ideas is where you're going to capture the most important facts, the terms, the concepts from each chapter so you don't forget them. And make sure you label them with the chapter they come from. So remember, this is facts. So here's one I put from Ignite Chapter 2 that you're going to be reading. I wrote, every second, millions of bits of sensory information from the eyes, ears, nose, taste buds, internal organs, skin, muscles, and other sensors bombard the brain. And it takes guidance and effort to build students' abilities to resist some of the distracting input. So I must direct attention to a particular stimulus, which is my lesson. So because that's just kind of a fact, an idea I want to remember, I put it under perusal ideas. But now I want to think about how I want to apply some of the things I learned. And so I'm going to put a chart in. I want you all to use a chart like this. This is going to be a chart that has to do with stress reduction. Remember, you'll need to put in a chart for chapter 1 as well. You'll put in a chart for every chapter, and you might want to subdivide your charts even further if you want. All right, so I'm going to make one about stress reduction. I'm going to go up here to insert table, and I want to make it 3 columns, and you can put as many, you could make it 3 by, I don't know, 5, 10. You can always add more. So I've got my table, and the table should be labeled first with, and I've got this up here so I can just cut and paste. You don't have to watch me type. First is the important idea, and then why it's important, and then my specific application ideas for my own classroom. So your table will look just like this, only it will have different things under those. So let's say one of my important ideas is that I want to, I read how I can use video clips to capture attention. Why is that important? Well, because they combine sound and visuals and motion and more. And then what's my specific application idea? I'm going to use the video from Edutopia that shows the teachers hooking students to get them interested in the Declaration of Independence. And I should probably go and maybe get the link to that video. And I could put that in there too. So this is a particularly important part of, I can get rid of this now. And this is kind of one of the key things you're doing in this class is taking general ideas and applying them specifically to your own classroom. Now let's take a moment and also just look into perusal. I want to look at 2 things. One is I want to show you how to annotate a video, because there are going to be videos every day in perusal. And even these introductory videos, you should be annotating them. All right, so here I am. I need to go to the student view, so it looks like what you would see. So here's my assignment. It contains a video. This is just a pretend one I made up. And I was taking notes earlier, so that's why notes are coming up, but I want to annotate it. Okay, so I'm going to start listening. You probably won't hear this well.
ChatGPT just introduced a bunch of new updates. The biggest one is a brand new ChatGPT model called GPT-4o.
Okay, so as soon as I hear something I want to comment on, I click add comment at the top, and then over here I can say the new GPT is called 4o. And then the thing I always have to remember, and I sometimes forget, have to hit return, or no one else can see what you said. So just like with when you're annotating documents, when you're annotating a video, everyone can see what you're saying, and you can, have conversations back and forth, just like you would with an article. I also wanted to make sure you all know where my scores is. So let's check and see how my score is so far. I was using an old class to do this. All right, so far I have no points at all, probably because all I put in was one kind of worthless little comment. And of course, I've made in your class, it's scored out of 10, but this is where you would find the scores. And they're going to build up over time. But the one that you need to see is, oh, look, no, I'm wrong. I've got a 0.6 out of 3. Ooh, not very good. But at any rate, usually the one you're working on is at the bottom. And that's what I need you to know. I need you to be able to check your scores and see how you're doing. The first round, when you like first look at a video or first read a reading, I want you to try to get your score to maybe somewhere between 8 and 9, maybe 7 and 9. And then when you come back in the next module to review, then you would try to get it to more like between 9 and 10. All right, so I hope you're ready to see this next module. It's a longer chapter than the other chapters, but I also think it has some of the best information and most practical information. I think you're going to love it. All right, I'll see you later.